Welcome to Sleeper Seahawks. I'm Dan. I'm glad to have you. Hit that subscribe button. Just do it. Hit the thumbs up and the subscribe. We're trying to grow this thing. Be one of the first. Appreciate you doing that. All right, on to today's topic. So we've been talking for the last couple of years now about maybe the most encouraging part about the Seahawks building a championship roster in a year that a lot of us felt like maybe was a year early last season, was the long-term outlook and health of this roster, the youth of the roster, not just how young the core was, but how large the core was. We're not just talking about 2 or 3 players are building around here. It's a lot more than that. And then you start looking years in the future, and you can see how this roster is going to have a lot of continuity, and that lends itself to championship windows, right? We hear that term all the time. Well, guess what? I'm not the only one saying it. Other analysts aren't the only ones saying it. ESPN now, on a more macro level, is saying it. They, every single year, do a survey where they take some of their analysts together and they look into the future. And they take the current year out of the equation. So we're not talking about 2026 year, but it's a 3-year window. So 27, 28, 29, and then they rank all these teams in a number of different factors and then rank them 1 through 32 on who they feel like has the brightest future in the NFL. And obviously, I'm not giving anything away here. The thumbnail says it. The Seahawks are on top. This is the piece I'm talking about. It came out on ESPN yesterday. NFL Future Power Rankings. And I'll just read a little bit about their process here so we have as much context as possible. So we asked our panel of experts, analysts Louis Riddick, Aaron Schatz, Ben Solak, and Seth Walder, to rate each team's quarterback situation, remaining roster makeup, front office, and coaching staff. And they go on a scale from 50 and below to 100. Now, their ranking system is 100 would be an A+, an elite. No teams got 100 this year. Spoiler alert. 90 to 99 is considered great, and then 80 to 89 is very good. And right there at the top, you see the Seattle Seahawks with an overall score of 88.7. So they're saying then by their grading system, they don't consider any of these teams to have a, quote, great future. But here's the full top 10. Seahawks on top with an 88.7, just edging out the Philadelphia Eagles with an 88.1 overall score. The Detroit Lions, Denver Broncos, Los Angeles Rams, I was a little surprised by that, but I'm going to kind of go through some of their rankings and talk about some of their rationalization and thought process on this. The New England Patriots at 6, the Green Bay Packers at 7, followed by the Houston Texans, Baltimore Ravens, and Los Angeles Chargers to round out the top 10. And then you'll see the note there at the bottom. As far as the rest of the NFC West goes, I figured the 49ers would be in the top half on this one. They are ranked 14th. But oh boy, look at that. The Arizona Cardinals, 32nd. I'm not here to talk about the Cardinals tonight. Maybe we'll do this a little bit on NFC West Mixtape on Thursday with Rob Guerrera when we look at the entire division every week. But I'm a little bit surprised by that. I actually see some things this preseason, especially from Mike LaFleur, that I consider from afar anyway to be pretty promising, and some things that the Cardinal fans, I think, can get a little bit excited about. But let's dig into this a little bit. And again, here you can see in the box there at the top, this is their ranking system and how they grade each of those 4 categories. And they even break down how much they weight it. The quarterback is 20%. The roster is 30%, the front office is 25%, and then coaching is 25%. So the Seahawks, where they give them their biggest grade, and I think if you scroll down, one of the highest grades in all of the league is the overall roster excluding the quarterback. So the supporting cast around Sam Darnold, they have at 91.25, which by their grading system is considered great. And you can see there, that ranks number 1 in the entire league. Now, the thing that drags their score down a bit, but they still end up finishing number 1, is the quarterback. They've got the quarterback situation at 16. Now, let's talk a little bit about what they say about that. Okay, a couple of things. Louis Riddick says, one of the reasons for concern is, and I quote, the relationship between Darnold and former OC Clint Kubiak was an obvious net positive for the organization. For the future, what does that real-time relationship look like between Darnold and new OC Brian Fleury? Fleury is not just calling plays for the first time on the NFL level, but also doing it with a roster that is set up to contend into the future. So he's not necessarily saying he doesn't believe in Darnold, but he's talking about the dynamic between quarterback and play caller. And I think he could have gone on to say here, because you're talking about 27, 8, and 9, is Brian Fleury going to be the play caller for all 3 of those years? If he succeeds here, he might not even be here for 2027. Listening to the guy talk, I've said this before, sounds like a head coach, incredibly intelligent. If he shows the kind of results on the field that teams are looking for, he might not be here long. Under Reason for Hope, Ben Solak says, the league has been looking for a young defensive counter-strike to the ascent of offensive masterminds Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, and the Seahawks have finally found it. Coach Mike Macdonald has a stellar track record of defensive player development and the emergence of wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba, offensive tackle Charles Cross, and quarterback Sam Darnold sets a high floor in Seattle for years to come. So, again, not dissing Darnold. They're just saying he's middle of the pack in there. Or not necessarily that he's middle of the pack, but the quarterback situation. Now, they don't mention it in their analysis here, but if they're truly taking into account the quarterback situation over the 3-year window they're grading, then of course they have to take contract situation into account, and there's no guarantee that Sam Darnold will be here for all 3 of those years. His contract only runs through 2027. And in fact, Seth Walder, as his bold prediction says, Darnold will not be on the Seahawks in 2028. He started last season red hot and finished fairly strong in Seattle's Super Bowl run. But from weeks 10 to 18, he ranked 27th out of 30 quarterbacks in QBR. The Super Bowl win certainly will buy Darnold time, but if he stumbles in 2027, I don't think there are guarantees that he will be re-signed. I'm not going to get into, is Sam Darnold a good quarterback or not? I think those of you who have heard me talk about him or seen my content know how I feel about that. But then it's fair. It's fair what he's saying. Now, some of that might be tied to the development of Jalen Milroe. Do they feel like he could be the next guy? Or does an opportunity present itself before Sam Darnold's contract is up that gives them a chance to get a quarterback that they really like, as happened a year and a half ago when they were able to get Sam Darnold when they moved on from Geno Smith, helped them make that decision because guys like Sam Darnold usually aren't available on the free agent market. Now, I did want to point something out. As we go back to this top 10 list, you know, this debate of, do you have to have an elite quarterback in order to contend for championships? Look at the teams here. Seahawks, Eagles, Lions, Broncos, top 4. In their estimation, as far as how bright their future is between 27 and 29. Sam Darnold, not considered an elite quarterback by the consensus. Jalen Hurts, not considered elite. Jared Goff, not considered elite. Bo Nix, not considered elite. Then you get to the Rams at 5. Stafford is. But is he going to be around in 27, 28, and 29? I just thought that was interesting. You know, here they are saying maybe full roster health from top to bottom, balance, depth, blue chip players at other positions. Maybe that's a little bit more important if you have a good floor-raising quarterback as opposed to an elite quarterback. Might speak to roster building. Now let's go down and see why they think so highly of the Rams, because I would have thought with Matthew Stafford's age, Myles Garrett's age, and some of their contract questions, they have a bunch of guys that are going to get paid next year. They got to make decisions on. So their rankings, let's go back over to the screen share here. They have their overall roster, excluding the quarterback, at 5th in the league. Their quarterback situation, 24th. So they absolutely are accounting for the fact that Stafford likely isn't going to be here. Otherwise, that ranking would have been much higher. But they have coaching, they have them number 1, and they have front office number 6. By the way, I didn't note this, but Seahawks, they have 3rd for coaching and 2nd for front office. And so let's see if they talk about that here. They don't really get into it. I wish they would give a summary. They do their reason for hope, reason for concern, nugget to know, bold prediction. They don't say it out loud, but they must obviously either feel good about Ty Simpson as a developmental quarterback, under Sean McVay, or just feel good enough about Sean McVay and Les Snead and their ability to go plug in a quarterback when the day comes when Stafford moves on. Did some calculations on my own also. They didn't rank this, but just to kind of get a feel for the Seahawks roster and what I think about this ranking and kind of what it means. Their average ages, and we won't know. We'll start to see some of these calculations, and different sites do it in different ways. And then near the end of the season, we'll see snap weighted rankings as far as average age. Last year, I think the Seahawks finished, it depends on where you look. I'd heard 5th, and then I've seen 3rd as far as at the end of the season average roster age, but they were top 5, I think, generally considered to be. Their average age on offense, 26.3 years of age, and their average age on defense, 27.8. Total starters, 27 years old. Now, I got to tell you something here. A couple of factors, because on their full depth chart, they actually list 12 players on each side, right? They consider sub packages. So they have Jaron Reed listed as a starter, even though really he's not. And then likewise, they have 3 receivers and a fullback listed on offense. So they have 12 players listed as starters there as well. And so this takes that into account. You take Jaron Reed out of that number, it drops a little bit. Leonard Williams likely isn't going to play all the way through 2027 or 2029 either. That would drop off a little bit. We know DeMarcus Lawrence is going to retire. He's already announced that. He won't be on the roster in 2027. That'll drop that number a little bit. And then on offense, Cooper Kupp at 33 and Sam Darnold at 29 are kind of bringing that number up too. But you look elsewhere around that offense, and I think one of the reasons that had to factor into their rankings is that offensive line averages about 25 and a half years of age, and it's all locked up long term. There's questions at right guard, but there's options on the offense and a bunch of picks next year. But 4 of the 5 locked up long term. It's a very, very exciting place to be, promising place to be, because it's hard to achieve roster continuity in the NFL these days with the salary cap, with players wanting to get paid in free agency. Now, teams are getting better at this. I don't think it's any surprise that the Seahawks and Eagles are 1 and 2, and they do it in very different ways because they find a way to keep all their core pieces long term, but they do it in different ways. The Seahawks keep their contract structures short, usually 3 years for veterans, even their high-end veterans. And then they've tapped into this technique over the last couple of years with their first-round picks. We saw it first with Charles Cross. Now we've seen it with JSN and Devin Witherspoon just a couple of days ago, where they extend them with 2 years left on their deal, the 4th year and then the 5th year option. And they do a 4-year deal, locking them up for 6 more years, but they're able to fold that new money into the existing 2 years on the deal, and it brings that AAV down, and it becomes much more reasonable. Whereas the Philadelphia Eagles, they don't care. They're going to hand out the biggest signing bonuses and the biggest contracts, and they're just going to tack on void years to spread out those cap hits, and they're going to worry about that when that credit card bill comes due. They'll worry about that later. And they have enough trust in Howie Roseman and how he evaluates talent and acquires talent to know that they're always able to restock the cupboards. And I think that's, if there's a common thread throughout these rankings, I think that's what we see, is when you go back and you look at the front offices. I think that's the kind of the common theme. Seahawks 2nd, Eagles 1st, Lions 5th, Broncos 9th. Kind of drags that down, but they're 6th in coaching and 2nd in overall roster. And then Rams, 6th in front office. I'm surprised they're actually that low. I think Les Snead is a top 5 GM. And so it's the ability to continue to restock the roster at lower levels with mid-round and late-round picks, even undrafted free agents and street free agents, so you can continue to pay your blue-chip players blue-chip top-of-the-market money, because you're not sacrificing depth. You're able to find depth at a value. Now, I'm going to wrap up with this, because this is one body of work, one entity. This is ESPN's opinion. Take it or leave it. There may be dissenting opinions out there. But I found another one that agrees, and this ties right into how bright the Seahawks' future would appear to be. Chris Clough, is someone you should be following on Twitter if you're a Seahawk fan. I'll put his Twitter handle down in the description. For a long time, he wrote about sports for the Seattle PI and Seattle Times. He actually covered the team during their 2005 Super Bowl run. He's written 2 books on the Seahawks. I have one of them on the shelf right behind me. And he always keeps a running roster tally for the next 3 years. Now, he includes the current year, so 26, 27, and 28. And he agrees. This is what his looks like. In red are the question marks. Look how few red, how little red there is on this chart, especially on offense. Through 2027, you can make an argument that that could all be black too. Jalen Sundell will be a restricted free agent, but unless something catastrophic happens injury-wise or he massively regresses in 2026, I don't see that happening. I think he's going to get even better. I think they find a way to extend him or at least bring him back on an RFA tender. And then he's got to be determined at right guard. Anthony Bradford, I think, is going to cost himself out of Seattle, but there are potentially answers on the roster. So that could be Bo Stevens or Christian Haynes or a Mason Richmond. We'll see. But 2027, at minimum, 9 of 11 starters locked up under contract. And even going into 2028, 7 of the 11 starters still under contract. And he's got TBD where Cooper Kupp was, but that could be Torrey Horton. Still, he'll be under contract for 2028. Darnold, I expect to be extended next year. He's got him in red in 2028, but he could still be here. And if Sundell gets extended next year, that takes care of that for 2028. So really only a couple of question marks there when we're talking 3 years down the road. And then on defense, there's a few more, but even into 2027, I expect Leonard Williams to get extended, and I think it's going to happen before the Patriots game week 1. And so then you can take him off of red on 2027. And then the only other TBD in 2027, he's got the edge rusher because DeMarcus Lawrence has announced this is going to be his final season. He's not going to fulfill the last year of his deal. He's going to walk away. And so really, even looking a year ahead, there's only 2 major question marks. One of those, I think, gets taken care of when Williams is extended. And then we've talked about the edge rush depth for quite a while. There is some uncertainty there long term. It's going to be a major focus leading into the draft next year. I do think there's going to be talk between now and the trade deadline of making a major acquisition there that could take care of that a little bit more long term. They could also bring Uchenna Nwosu back again. We'll see how that goes. And then you get into 2028, and that's when there's quite a bit more red, right? Strong safety, Julian Love, even linebacker, Drake Thomas, and Ernest Jones. Their deals expire before them, but those guys could easily be extended before we get there. And so now you have 2 bodies of work showing that the Seahawks' long-term future is very continuous, very promising, and very exciting if you're a Seahawks fan. Now, a lot of it's tied to the quarterback. We understand that. And 2026 is going to mean a lot. I'm of the school of thought that I think we're going to see a better version of Sam Darnold. And I think it's going to be a no-brainer that they extend him next year. But anything can happen. I'm open-minded to it. And to get to the end of that window that ESPN covers, maybe there will have to be something addressed in the quarterback situation. As I said, if you would please hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, really help us build. We're closing in on 1,000 subscriptions. Would love to get there before opening week. Really appreciate you being here. This is what this is going to be like, one focused topic every week. No live ad reads, shorter videos. If you want longer, more conversational, thoughtful analysis on all things Seahawks, you can check out my main channel, Seahawks Forever, where there's daily content. That link is down in the description. And as an independent full-time content creator, if you want to help support me, right there, QR code. You can buy me a beer or a coffee if you prefer to do that. But subscribe and be part of the Sleeper Seahawks family, because I know I've been promising this for a while. The training camp thing set me back a little bit. I will lock down by the end of this week how we're going to administer those fantasy leagues, and we'll do that next week. And then during the season, you're going to get one pre-recorded video like this on a focused topic, and then you're going to get a live stream where we go over the fantasy stuff and we use the Sleeper app. I'm going to have a Pick'em League, a Survivor League, and a couple of different fantasy leagues And so I'll have all the details next week on how to get involved in that. Really looking forward to that. Thanks, guys. Follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. Until next time, go Hawks. Thank you so much for watching.